My teenage daughter looked me straight in the eye and said, "Honestly, Dad, you're just bitter because Mom traded up." I didn't argue. I just stood up, grabbed my keys off the counter, and walked out the door. The next morning, she had no way to get to school. And that's when she learned exactly who'd been quietly keeping a roof over their heads. I'm a 42-year-old man, and I never pictured myself writing something like this. But here I am, 3 years after my divorce, still figuring out just how much damage a bitter ex-wife can do when it comes to turning your kids against you. This all kicked off last Tuesday. My daughter had stayed with me over the weekend, which already felt like a small miracle since she usually picked her mom's place these days. I was in the kitchen making dinner when she dropped a line that flipped everything upside down. She was half distracted, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even in the room, when she started bragging about her mom's new boyfriend, how he took them to some high-end restaurant last weekend, how he drives around in a BMW, how he's planning some big trip to Europe this summer. Just the usual updates that made my stomach twist. I kept quiet and focused on stirring the pasta sauce, but then she looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Cold, almost like she was disgusted. She repeated what her mom had been telling her, that I was holding them back financially, that if I really cared about their future, I'd stop fighting about support payments, that her mom deserved a better life than the one I'd given her. Trying to stay calm, I asked what she meant by that. My daughter rolled her eyes and said her mom had explained everything. According to her, I was just bitter about the divorce, punishing everyone because I couldn't accept that Mom had moved on with a better man. Those words hit me like ice water. I set the wooden spoon down and just stared at her, really looked at her. When did my own daughter start looking at me like I was some kind of loser? When did I become the villain in her story? So I asked her outright if that's what she believed too. If she really thought I was nothing more than a bitter ex-husband making life harder for everyone. That's when she said it. The line that would keep replaying in my head for hours afterward. "Honestly, Dad, you're just bitter because Mom upgraded." The silence that followed was unbearable. I felt something in my chest snap, something I'd been holding together with tape and hope for 3 long years. She, on the other hand, just went right back to her phone like she'd made some casual comment about the weather. I switched off the stove, picked up my wallet and keys from the counter, and walked to the door without saying a word. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't even glance up. She just kept scrolling like her father's heart wasn't breaking in real time. That night I drove around for 2 hours. Just aimlessly went through old neighborhoods I used to know, thinking about how the guy who worked 60-hour weeks to give his family everything had somehow ended up being painted as a failure in his own daughter's eyes. The divorce was ugly, but I thought we'd shielded the kids from most of it. I guess I was wrong. Turns out my ex had been rewriting the story for 3 years straight, and I was the last one to find out. When I got back around midnight, the light in my daughter's room was off. I sat in the kitchen staring at the half-cooked pasta and made up my mind. The next morning, she came out of her room ready for school, backpack slung over her shoulder, expecting the usual ride. I was already at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. She asked if I was ready to go. I told her I wasn't driving her anymore. She'd have to figure something else out. The look on her face was almost funny in a dark way. She couldn't wrap her head around what I was saying. Like the idea of consequences had never crossed her mind. I told her that since I was just a bitter failure who couldn't accept Mom's so-called upgrade, maybe she should ask that upgrade for a ride. After all, he had that shiny BMW she couldn't stop talking about. She started to protest, saying she didn't mean it like that, but I held up my hand and cut her off. I told her I'd heard her loud and clear. I understood exactly where I stood in her eyes, and from now on, I'd act accordingly. She tried calling her mom, but it went straight to voicemail. For the first time in years, I heard panic in her voice as she left a message saying her dad was acting weird and wouldn't take her to school. She begged her mom to call back. 20 minutes went by, then 30. No call back. My daughter paced the kitchen, checking her phone like it was a lifeline. She finally snapped at me, asking if I was really going to let her be late over this. I told her this wasn't about school. It was about learning that words have power and actions carry consequences. That the bitter failure she thought I was had been the same man driving her every morning, buying her clothes, paying her phone bill, and covering bills her mother couldn't handle. Her whole expression shifted. She asked what I meant about covering bills. That's when I opened my laptop and showed her the spreadsheet I'd been keeping for 3 years. Every single extra payment beyond the court order. Every time I'd bailed her mom out on rent. Every utility bill, every grocery run, every medical copay I'd quietly handled so the kids wouldn't go without. Even I had to pause seeing all those numbers lined up. Over $40,000 in 3 years. Above and beyond what the court required. That was money I'd sent without hesitation, even if it meant living on ramen myself for weeks at a time. She sat there staring at the screen, scrolling through line after line. Mom's rent, covered 6 times in the last 2 years. The car payment on the Honda her mom drove? Mine. The phone plan that kept all of them connected? Mine. Even that Disney World trip they bragged about last year had been partly funded by an emergency request I didn't say no to. She finally asked why her mom never told them about any of this, why she always acted like I was stingy. I closed the laptop and told her plain and simple. Her mother had been spinning her own version of events. In her story, I was the villain. But the truth was right there in black and white. It hit my daughter like a freight train. She realized the BMW boyfriend might be flashy, but he wasn't the one footing the bills that kept their lives running. Mom's upgrade looked good on the outside, but when real responsibility came knocking, they still came to me. She tried calling her mom again. Still no answer. I told her I had to get to work, and she needed to sort out her own ride. From this point forward, things were going to change. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done being treated like nothing more than a walking ATM. She begged me not to go through with it, swearing she hadn't meant what she said. But my mind was made up. I told her for the next month, she'd get a taste of what life would really be like if I were the bitter, absent father she seemed to think I was. I grabbed my work bag and headed for the door. She was still standing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, when I walked out. Update 1. It's been a week since everything blew up, and the aftermath has been louder and messier than I thought it would be. My daughter ended up skipping school that first day. Her mom finally called me around noon, spitting fire, demanding to know what kind of father abandons his own kid over a few words. I shot back with my own question. What kind of mother teaches her child to disrespect the man who's been quietly bankrolling their life for 3 years? The dead silence on the other end of the line told me more than any argument could. That same evening, my ex showed up at my place with my daughter in tow. She stormed into my kitchen like she still lived there, demanding I quit acting childish and go back to my normal role. I didn't raise my voice. I just handed her the same spreadsheet I'd shown our daughter. I told her that starting right then, I was only paying the court-ordered support. No extras, no bailouts, no rent rescue missions, no more family phone plan. If she wanted upgrades, she could find someone else's wallet. I watched the color drain from her face as she realized what that actually meant. She tried arguing that the kids would be the ones to suffer, that I was being spiteful. I reminded her of her own story, that she'd upgraded to a better man, one who should be more than capable of stepping up to handle the responsibilities that come with family life. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just giving her the space to let her upgrade shine. My daughter sat there watching the back and forth, her eyes widening as the truth finally started showing itself. She was beginning to see the gap between her mom's narrative and reality. Over the next few days, the cracks in the fairy tale became impossible to miss. The BMW boyfriend suddenly wasn't as available to give her rides. The fancy dinners slowed down. When my ex asked him to cover the rent shortfall now that my money wasn't padding things, he suddenly had his own financial priorities. By Thursday, my daughter called me sounding different. Her voice was smaller, softer, almost like the little girl I remembered from before the divorce poisoned everything. She came over that night, and we sat on the back porch while she worked up the courage to talk. She admitted she'd been angry at me ever since the divorce, and it had been easier to blame me since Mom framed it all as my fault. She said she got swept up in the excitement of Mom's shiny new relationship and the lifestyle it promised. But this past week opened her eyes. When the BMW boyfriend couldn't pick her up from school, she had to ride the bus. When their phone service got cut off for non-payment, she realized who had really been holding everything together. She apologized, not just for the words she'd thrown at me, but for the way she'd been treating me for months. She told me she understood now why I reacted the way I did, and she didn't blame me for being hurt. I told her I appreciated hearing that, but things couldn't just snap back to normal overnight. Respect isn't earned with one apology. It's shown through consistent actions. I needed to see real change before I was willing to step back into the old role I'd been playing. She asked what that meant in practice. I explained I'd keep paying the court-ordered support. Nothing more. If she wanted a ride to school, she could ask me respectfully, and I'd consider it depending on my schedule. But the days of me being taken for granted were finished. She nodded with tears in her eyes, saying she understood, that she wanted to rebuild our relationship the right way this time. It was a start, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down yet. Update 2. 2 weeks have gone by, and things have unfolded in ways I didn't see coming. My ex finally got a full taste of reality when she had to live within her own means for the first time in years. Without my quiet safety net, the walls closed in fast. Her BMW boyfriend's true colors came out when she asked him to co-sign on a smaller apartment after realizing she couldn't keep up with her current rent. He backed out immediately, saying he couldn't risk his credit because of other investments. Suddenly, that upgrade didn't seem so shiny. Meanwhile, my daughter has been making honest efforts to patch things up. She's been coming over for dinner twice a week, helping cook, actually sitting down to talk instead of burying her face in her phone. She even asked me to teach her about budgeting and finances, said she wanted to understand how money really works. Last Tuesday, she handed me a letter she'd written. In it, she admitted how deeply her words had cut me, and she took responsibility for parroting her mother's side of the story without ever questioning it. She also wrote about what she'd learned, that flashy gestures aren't the same as real commitment. The real test came when her mom asked her to play messenger. My ex wanted her to convince me to restart the extra payments, just until things settled down. Instead of pressuring me, my daughter asked me why I had been making those extra payments all along. That sparked a long conversation about divorce, sacrifice, and what it means to put your kids first, even when you don't get credit for it. Afterward, she went back to her mom and told her flat out that she thought mom needed to figure things out on her own. That it wasn't fair to keep expecting me to subsidize a lifestyle while being disrespected in the process. My ex didn't handle that well. She accused me of poisoning our daughter against her, of manipulating her emotionally. She even threatened to drag me back to court. But my daughter overheard all of it, and that was the moment something in her shifted for good. She realized her mom was more worried about protecting her lifestyle than taking responsibility for her own choices. The final straw came when my ex, out of frustration, tossed out the idea that maybe our daughter should just live with me full-time if she was going to take my side. She meant it as a threat, expecting our daughter to fold immediately. Instead, my daughter looked her in the eye and said that actually sounded like a good idea. She'd been thinking about it already, and now it just confirmed her decision. The look on my ex's face is something I'll never forget. Her bluff was called by her own child. Now we're working through the logistics of her moving in with me permanently. She'll still see her mom, but she wants stability and consistency, things she's realizing I've been providing all along. As for the BMW boyfriend, he's been noticeably absent from recent family talks. Turns out dealing with bills and teenage drama wasn't part of his upgrade plan. Update 3. It's been a month since this whole mess started, and I've been sitting here just taking in how completely my life has turned around. 2 weeks ago, my daughter officially moved in with me. Honestly, the transition has gone smoother than I ever expected. Part of it is that she's truly committed to making this work, and part of it is that she's finally starting to understand what real responsibility and partnership look like. She's thriving. Her grades are solid, she's handling her own laundry without being asked, and she even got herself a part-time job so she could pay for her own phone plan. She told me she doesn't want to take things for granted anymore. She wants to understand the value of money and earn her own way. That hit me hard in a good way. Meanwhile, my ex's life has taken a different turn. She's had to downsize her whole situation pretty drastically. The BMW boyfriend? He vanished as soon as he realized dating her meant more than dinners and flashy weekends. It meant bills, responsibilities, and a teenage daughter who wasn't impressed by his car. Turns out, the so-called upgrade wasn't much of an upgrade after all. Then, just last week, I got a call from my ex, and for the first time in 3 years she actually sounded humble. She admitted she'd been unfair in the way she'd painted me to our daughter. She said she got carried away with the excitement of her new relationship and never thought about the long-term consequences. She didn't ask for money this time. She asked if there was a way we could work together better for our daughter's sake. Not as enemies, but as co-parents, with respect. I told her I was open to it, but only under a few conditions. Honesty, respect, and no more rewriting history. No more using our daughter as a go-between. And no more acting like my contributions are invisible. She agreed. And believe it or not, we've already had 2 decent, productive conversations since then about our daughter's future, college planning, long-term goals, that sort of thing. As for my daughter, she's been blossoming with the stability and consistency here. She's made new friends, joined the debate team, and started talking seriously about what she might want to study in college. She's even working on rebuilding her relationship with her mom, but now it's on honest terms, not the old one-sided story she used to get. Last night, she said something to me I'll never forget. She thanked me for not giving up on her, even when she was treating me horribly. She told me that watching how I handled all of this taught her more about character and integrity than any lecture ever could. Then she added something that nearly broke me, in a good way. She said she finally understands the difference between someone who says they love you and someone who actually shows it through their actions, even when you don't deserve it. That bitter failure her mom claimed she'd upgraded from? That was me. I was the one who kept showing up. I was the one who sacrificed quietly in the background. I was the one who loved my daughter enough to let her face the hard lessons she needed to learn. Sometimes the upgrade you need isn't about finding someone new. It's about finally recognizing the value of what you already had. My daughter figured that out just in time. My ex, she figured it out too late. And me, I learned something too. I learned that sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to find out what really matters. And what matters most is raising a daughter who knows her worth and won't settle for anyone who can't see it too. The revenge I got wasn't some big master plan. It was simply stepping back and letting the truth play itself out. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people feel the weight of their own choices without you holding the safety net. Pretty quickly, they realize what they actually lost. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, a simple tap on the subscribe button would mean a lot.